not shooting at the thermonuclear weapon.
John Travolta is one of the coolest bad guys ever in Broken Arrow. Released in 1996, this action spectacle sees Travolta plays Deakins, aka Deke, a captain in the Air Force who betrays his country and tries to steal 2 nuclear weapons and plans to use them if his demands are not met. The only thing standing in his way is his former friend and colleague Hale, played by Christian Slater, where the two go on an explosive game of cat and mouse in a national park in Utah, where the men try to outsmart, outdo, and destroy one another.
You're out of your mind. Yeah. Ain't it cool?
So, welcome to Broken Arrow, aka that movie that has that really weird John Travolta puppet. Oh god, oh, look at that thing, oh. John Travolta? That's more like John Travolting, am I right? Huh. So, 10 things you didn't know about Broken Arrow? Let's check it out. Number 10. Title Inaccuracies. So in Broken Arrow, we learn that Broken Arrow is a term used to describe the loss or theft of a nuclear weapon. However, in real life, the term used for a stolen or missing nuclear weapon is actually empty quiver. So, really, the movie should have been called Empty Quiver. But admittedly, Broken Arrow sounds cooler. Incidentally, Broken Arrow is actually a term used to describe an incident involving a nuclear weapon that has no risk of nuclear war. Well, that's definitely not the case in the movie, as John Travolta was batshit insane. But yeah, just imagine if the movie was called Empty Quiver. Number 9. Broken Arrow got made thanks to speed. Broken Arrow was the brainchild of scriptwriter Graham Yost, and 20th Century Fox greenlit his Broken Arrow script because he previously wrote the script for fellow action movie Speed. And well, 20th Century Fox were clearly happy with Yost's efforts, as Speed was very successful. So yeah, they were more than happy to greenlight Broken Arrow, and thus keep that success going. Incidentally, Broken Arrow was produced by filmmaker Mark Gordon, who also produced Speed, so Broken Arrow was kind of like a follow-up to Speed, or be that a Speed reunion. It's interesting because most of the action in Speed is confined to the inside of a bus, but Broken Arrow takes place in a vast open desert setting, almost as if when writing Broken Arrow, Yost was sick of writing action scenes inside a small bus, so now we get vast big landscapes. Now, unless I'm mistaken, some early trailers for Broken Arrow actually did use music from Speed. Number 8. The original director left to get Free Willy. So when it came to directing this big spectacular action-packed beast, Dwight H. Little was hired to direct, who previously directed fellow action movies Marked for Death and Rapid Fire, as well as Halloween 4. However, Little was also offered to direct the Free Willy sequel, Free Willy 2: The Adventure Home, and considering the first Free Willy movie was such a hit, Little chose to direct Free Willy 2 instead, thinking that it would be a big moneymaker. So Hong Kong film director John Woo was hired to direct instead. Woo is without a doubt a master of his craft when it comes to helming action movies, as he had been directing action movies since the 70s, and really wowed fans of the genre over the years thanks to his efforts. In fact, Broken Arrow was his second US movie after directing Hard Target a few years earlier. His stylistic way of making action movies would continue with the likes of Face Off and Mission Impossible 2. Number 7. Casting possibilities. Now, by the mid-90s, John Travolta had become a big-time actor again, thanks to Pulp Fiction, after his career went through something of a dormant stage in the late 80s and early 90s, but nope, now he was big and back in a spectacular way. Interestingly though, when it came to casting, Travolta was originally offered the role of the movie's hero, Riley Hale, but Travolta was more interested in playing the cool, slick villain Vic Deakins, so he was cast in that part. Christian Slater was cast as Hale, and he turned down starring in fellow action movie Assassins in order to star in Broken Arrow. Now the part of the park ranger, Terry Carmichael, was a bit more tricky-dicky. Several actresses were considered for the part, including Halle Berry, Lauren Holly, Helen Hunt, and Jennifer Aniston. But the part went to Samantha Mathis, who I'll always know as the princess from the Super Mario Bros. Movie. However, her casting was a bit awkward, as her and Christian Slater were previously a couple, but weren't anymore. Yeah, once again, a bit awkward. But their romance in Broken Arrow is more implied. You know, more innuendo. There's a scene where Slater's character fires a gun in between her open legs in order to kill the bad guy. And she's like, oh my. And Slater's like, yep, that's a first for me too. That went over my head as a kid. Number 6, preparations for Broken Arrow. It seems that some of the stars had to go above and beyond when it came to preparing for their roles in Broken Arrow. Samantha Mathis asked fellow actress Sandra Bullock how to prepare for an action scene, which probably makes sense as Bullock had previously starred in the as-mentioned Speed. Bullock's reply was to just hum the James Bond theme before performing an action scene. Yep, well, I guess that'll do it. According to IMDb, Christian Slater gave up smoking for the part and performed most of his own stunts. Professional footballer Howie Long starred in the movie as one of Deacon's thugs, Master Sergeant Kelly. Now he was meant to die quite early in the film, but because executives at Fox were happy with his performance, his character's death was saved to the movie's climax. Director John Woo and John Travolta supposedly got along really well while making this movie, in which Woo would cast Travolta in his next action extravaganza, Face Off. Number 5, filming location. Most of Broken Arrow was mainly filmed on location as opposed to studio filming, where we got many great shots of some truly wonderful natural landscapes, giving Broken Arrow its own unique visual identity. Seriously, America's a beautiful country. Most of the filming took place in locations including Glen Canyon National Recreation Area in Utah, Lake Powell, also in Utah, Mojave Desert in California, and Coconino County, Arizona. So, like I said, for the most part, the movie looks great. There's just one thing that I have an issue with, and that's the train sequence in the movie's climax. Now, despite being set in Utah, these scenes were actually filmed on a privately owned rail in Montana, which is fine, but in some shots, it just looks like the train is moving very, very slowly. Look, I get it, health and safety comes first, but seeing our heroes and villains fight it out on a very slow train doesn't exactly get my blood pumping. But hey, that's just a nitpick. Number 4, the novelization. Yeah, believe it or not, but there was a Broken Arrow novelization. So if back in the day you went and saw Broken Arrow at a movie theater and just needed a more in-depth exploration of this action-packed adventure, then the Broken Arrow novelization had you covered. Yeah, but on a serious note, does anyone else remember that? That back in the day a movie would come out and a novelization would be released alongside it? It's basically unheard of now. It really is a lost art, or a novel concept, no pun intended. But back in the 80s and 90s, this was actually quite common. The novel was written by writer Jeff Rovin, who previously wrote the novelizations for Reanimator, Cliffhanger, and the Mortal Kombat movie. The book is closer to the original Broken Arrow script, and so there are some changes. For example, the character Deke was an older character, much older than Travolta was at that time. Likewise, the character Hale was in fact younger, as Slater, who would have been about 26 at the time of shooting, was older than the character as he was originally written. It is also said that the Carmichael character had more of a backstory. Well, more than she has a dog. And in the book, her fight scene at the end where she throws a hammer at that guy's head was a lot more brutal than what we see in the film. Number 3, music recycled. The music of Broken Arrow was created by Gladiator and Dark Knight trilogy composer Hans Zimmer. When it came to scoring the movie, he took inspiration from Ennio Morricone, particularly when it came to his music that he composed for Sergio Leone movies. Zimmer's Broken Arrow score was widely praised, but the piece of music that stood out the most was the guitar riffs for a tune called Rope-a-Dope, otherwise known as Deacon's theme. The music is often accompanied by the Deacon character, and I guess it's meant to display just how cool and slick he is.
Maybe the son of a bitch is dead.
What a terrible thing to say.
In addition to that, the catchy guitar strings were performed by rock and roll legend Duane Eddy. And I always felt like the guitar work in this piece of music sounds a little bit like David Lynch's Falling theme from Twin Peaks, but maybe that's just me. Now this is where things get a bit weird. The following year, when the movie Scream 2 was being made, the production of that movie liked Deacon's theme so much, they decided to reuse that music and turned it into Dewey's theme for that movie.
Dewey?
Now originally it was used in an early cut of that movie, before the movie's score was complete, which often happens. Temporary music from other movies would be used in order to help set the mood. And the powers that be felt the music went so well with Scream 2, they just decided to leave it in the movie. Yeah, a piece of music made for another movie just got to stay there. The irony is, Scream 2 is about a copycat killer, where the whole time it was really about a copycat composer.
Hush! Hush!
Number 2, delays and setbacks. Oh yeah, once the movie was made, it wasn't an easy race to the finish line for getting the movie released. The original cut of Broken Arrow stood at 2 hours, but it was considered too violent, where in order to get an R rating from the MPAA, several violent scenes had to be cut from the movie. There supposedly was also a lot of studio interference when it came to putting the movie together. I guess John Woo had one vision and the studio had another. I feel like Woo's next movie, Face Off, was probably more to Woo's vision, as it did feel richer with his stylistic approach, as well as being quite brutal with its violence. Ultimately, Broken Arrow's eventual duration was just over 1 hour and 40 minutes, so there are several deleted scenes out there. Hey, at the end of the day, I'm just glad we still get to see that weird John Travolta puppet. In addition to that, Broken Arrow was meant to be released round about Christmas time 1995, but the movie's special effects weren't ready, so it was pushed back to early 1996. But, regardless, the movie must have had some pretty clever people working on it. I mean, after all, check out the big brain on Brett! Number 1, reaching the number 1 spot in the box office. Broken Arrow was released in February 1996, and it was very successful, bringing in just over $150 million on its $50 million budget, and it spent 2 weeks in the number 1 spot in the box office. The movie, however, got mixed reviews though. Roger Ebert in particular felt that Broken Arrow is the type of movie where the bad guy has the gun and can easily shoot his opponent, but instead he talks and talks and talks and talks to the point where the good guy manages to escape and get away. Simply all because the bad guy likes the sound of his own voice too much, or he said something to that effect. And yeah, look, I can understand that point. But look, it's just meant to be a fun action-adventure movie, very much in the same vein as movies like Indiana Jones, James Bond, and Die Hard. And yeah, the villains in those movies often do like talking a lot. I can remember being a kid and going to the drive-in with my family to see Broken Arrow, and I loved it. I believe we saw it as a double bill with Twister, so that was a good night. Upon giving Broken Arrow a rewatch for this episode, I felt there was something very alluring and endearing about Travolta's character, despite being the bad guy, who essentially is actually really a nasty piece of work. I think this is because there's a sort of big brother, little brother dynamic between him and Christian Slater's character. You get the feeling Travolta's Deacon's character is a big bully to his little brother archetype, Hale, and wants him to become stronger and able to snap and fight back with fierce conviction. Even later in the movie when they become enemies, you still can't help but feel like Deacons is somewhat proud of Hale for standing up to him and fighting back. and this dynamic makes the movie interesting. So go watch Broken Arrow. It's a fun popcorn movie with plenty of action and spectacle to keep you happy and content throughout its duration. It's definitely a rush. The movie is fun. Yeah, it's lots of fun. And I guess that about wraps everything up. So, I'm Minty, and is it just me or does John Travolta seriously play the coolest bad guy ever? The dude totally should have played Mr. Freeze. See ya!